Please welcome to the stage the first ever live performance and bloody recording of the Weekly Hour. Please
This is not the podcast studio. What are we doing here? You know I don't like change, that's how I justify my bigotry to myself.
Trust me, this is exciting. We're doing a whole different thing this week. It's going to be huge. This is the next step, you guys. Tell them, Luke.
Well, I think it's time I told you all why you've been brought here this week.
Yes, it is time, Luke. Hurry up.
Oh, right. We're moving away from podcasts, all right? They're yesterday's potatoes. Old hat, even Serial only got 12 episodes and that thing was friggin' huge. This is the theatre. This is the next step. And this is our debut.
Right, so are we still doing news and current affairs?
Yeah, of course.
So who are all these people?
Well, for taxation purposes, these are unpaid interns, but really they paid us to be here.
Okay, well, if we're gonna be here, I bags a room with all the books. They should burn up nicely. Tom, I want you outside, get some berries, sticks to build a shelter, and Lance, let's talk about a cannibalism pact in case this thing goes south.
Well, the housewives of Australian England.
Looks like.
Minister thought an idiot. But we're obviously considering.
Interesting to see if you...
There's a Chinese spy. Fish open sauce can, mate.
Every dollar from the taxpayer.
So commit suicide, Tony Adams. Good.
She'll be right.
Some of you may know that the Weekly Hour is Australia's favourite, sometimes weekly Australian podcast that never goes for an hour. But did you know that this edition of the Weekly Hour isn't a podcast at all?
It's true. We usually like to begin each episode of the Weekly Hour by saying, "Welcome to the Weekly Hour." But given that this is a super special live theatrical event,
Today will be no different. Welcome to the Weekly Hour, the Nightly Live.
We'll be looking into the issues that matter to you, such as the new federal cabinet lineup, the Republican war on Planned Parenthood over in the US, and the tragedy that is queer youth homelessness.
Let's meet our players.
first but not least, he's the perfectly proficient pontificator, the quite capable conversationalist, the entirely adequate orator. It's me, Thomas. Give me a round of applause. And he's the another host, it's Lance. And filling our required 25% women in podcasting and related media quota, she puts the tire in political satire. Janie's the gentleman, it's Lindsay. And on drums, he's the Weekly Hours roving producer, it's Luke.
Well, let's head over to the desk, shall we?
Yeah, we're already behind the desk. Good evening. The headlines this hour. The government has announced that changes to the regulation of Australian universities will be shelved until after the next election.
The shelving of the changes, much like the shelving of pingy good party drugs by mesh tank top 19-year-olds at Revolver, sounds like it's a good thing. It will actually kick in later, resulting in missing time, hex hangover, and crippling debt to unsavoury characters.
And Minister for Immigration and Giant Thumb with a dopey face drawn on, Peter Dutton, has denied rapper and puncher Chris Brown entry into the country on character grounds due to his history of domestic violence.
Brown has visited Australia twice since the 2009 incident in which he hospitalised his then-girlfriend Rihanna, but when a rumour reached the office of Immigration Minister and drowsy chipmunk Peter Dutton that Brown intended to travel to the country this time by boat, Dutton allegedly flew into a rage, saying, "That seafaring son of a bitch will visit Australia over my dead body."
And in sport, one of the two participating teams in last week's 2015 AFL Grand Final won.
Oh boy, they sure did. So, Thomas, what did you think about the game last weekend?
Well, I certainly think that the fans of whichever team didn't win will be licking their wounds for a good long while.
We have a lot in common.
Yes, we do.
We begin tonight with a review of the government's brand new cabinet.
Yes, shiny new Prime Minister and man who just made a girl come, Malcolm Turnbull, made his cabinet picks public a few weeks ago, with some leaving and some fresh new faces joining the team as well, including some women.
The buzz before the announcement of the renewed lineup emerged in the form of many fantasy cabinets being published in the media, mainstream and social alike.
My fantasy cabinet had Peter Dutton riding on a rainbow.
Let's take a look.
Michaelia Cash, aerobics instructor, is now both the Minister for Employment and the Minister for Women, which doesn't really seem fair. It seems a little biased. I mean, she had the distinct advantage of being a woman.
Warren Truss has held on to the position of Minister for Infrastructure, Regional Development and being a literal liver spot.
Christopher Pine, newspaper boy that wished on a cursed carnival gypsy machine to become big, is the new Minister for Science, Industry and Innovation, which has been speculated to be a considerable upgrade from not having a Minister for Science.
And in a historical appointment, Maurice Payne becomes the first redhead to ever be the Minister for Defence.
She's doing double duty as well, additionally taking on the ministry for being your mum's friend who asks if you have a girlfriend yet.
And Country Liberal Party Senator Nigel Scullion continues as the Minister for Indigenous Affairs, in between promotion tours for his new book, The Hidden Powers of Fermented Food and What It Can Do for Your Sexless Marriage.
And Barnaby Joyce, tomato cursed with life by a tricky wizard, remains the Minister for Agriculture, which now also contains the Water Resources portfolio. He also remains a hopeful Hollywood hound murderer.
Ashley and Martin before picture, Josh Frydenberg, is the Minister for Energy and Resources. Shame you can't put more energy and resources into not looking like a shitty balding fuck all the time.
And Greg Hunt, pictured here on Schoolies in 2014, is Minister for the Environment, a job which includes overseeing the protection of endangered Australian species, such as Gina Reinhardt.
There's some others in there too.
Yes, Julie Bishop remains Foreign Minister and Deputy Leader, as well as remaining the resident bike helmet model and sworn enemy of King Aslan and all of Narnia. Pictured here without a line or the wardrobe.
And Scott Morrison has finally achieved his dream of becoming the Lord of Darkness, destroyer of everything the light touches. Sorry. Scott Morrison has finally achieved his tertiary dream of becoming Treasurer. In order to prove his worthiness for the job, he reportedly had to create 7 Horcruxes, as well as look after a robot baby economy for an entire week, which involved several restless nights, as his sleep was interrupted by miniature budget emergencies.
And left out in the cold this time is the ghost of Christmas future, Erica Betts.
Homegrown Ronald Reagan, Kevin Andrews,
1960s Doctor Who robot in human skin, Ian McFarlane.
and Michael Ronaldson.
Not to mention poor Joe Hockey, mastermind behind the Age of Entitlement and Labour's debt and deficit disaster, who has decided to bow out of politics.
Goodbye, Joe. May you find yourself a similarly undeserved high-paying job in the afterlife.
Now to our first interview for the evening. Joining me tonight is the Undersecretary to the Minister of Interdepartmental Communication and Relations, Mr. Anderson Lawright. Mr. Lawright, welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure to be here, Thomas.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you.
No, the pleasure is all mine.
No, please. Allow me to shoulder some of the pleasure. You're my guest, and it wouldn't be right of me to leave it all to you.
You're very kind.
Now, Minister, in light of recent events, how are you today?
That's a fair question. That's a very fair question. The first point I'd like to make in relation to how I are today is that the previous government left us in a position to be generally less well than we would have liked to be today. But our message to the Australian people is that we have a strong suite of policies that will, over the coming years, help us to achieve a surplus of wellness, goodness, and also not badness. And I think that that's what the electorate voted us in to do.
Right, well, okay, on to another matter now. Would it be fair to say that it's currently unseasonably temperate?
I'm afraid I don't quite know what you're getting at, Thomas.
The weather, Mr. Lawright, how do you like it?
Thomas, I'm not going to comment on rumours and Canberra insider games. We are moving forward with our vision for the state of the climate in the years to come. The important thing here is that we are dealing with the matter in line with the law and with the evidence. And that's what matters to the Australian people.
Right, so in light of all this, what are you getting up to this weekend?
Well, look, Thomas, the point I'd like to make is that the boats have stopped. The carbon tax is we're well underway in building the roads of the 21st century. And all of the roads are leading to a budget surplus, Thomas.
Look, sir, our viewers are going to expect an answer to the question I've asked you, and I wouldn't be doing my job properly if I let you leave here without answering to the specific detail I've put to you. Anderson, you're not saying anything.
I've given you the answer you deserve.
Well, thank you for joining me on the Weekly Hour.
No, thank you for joining me on the Weekly Hour.
We'll be right back after this brief message.
And now, a word from our sponsors. All this production value doesn't come cheap, you know.
Do you suffer setbacks in achieving your goals, problems with things that happen, or anxiety when dealing with stuff?
That sure sounds like me.
No more! Head on over to Naughty Graham's House of Lies, and we have all the best deals, all the most popular lies from leading brands.
Gee, that sounds too good to be true. What kind of lies do you have?
None of them. We have no lies. Not really. That was one of our classic lies. Naughty Graham's House of Lies, we've got favourites such as I'm on my way. I'll get the report to you by Monday. And who could forget, dog ate my alarm clock. And that's it. No more lies. Not really. We have other lies.
Well, gee, that's a relief. I already knew all those lies.
It's Naughty Graham's House of Lies. Never go there. Not really. Go there.
And now to our second interview of the night.
That's right, Lindsay. And this isn't going to be just any old interview. We've pulled out all of the strings, all of the legs, butted all of the palms, most of the legs, tied up all the palms with string, and brought out the big guns for this one.
Yes, that's right. Could you all please stand and put your hands together and then sit back down and enthusiastically remain seated for the former Prime Minister, ex-captain of the good ship government, Mr. Tony Abbott. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Abbott.
Well, thank you for having me.
Mr. Not Prime Minister, Captain, you led the government for just over 2 years. Certainly there were many ups and downs during that time. With the power of hindsight, would you have said or done anything differently in the run-up to the leadership spill that saw you deposed as Liberal Party leader?
Lance, Lindsay, I can honestly say that I wouldn't have. Listen, how about this? Let me tell you how it all went down. I swung the Oldsmobile into a parking space in front of Parliament House. It was one of those icy Canberra days, the kind where you can see your breath and need to pull the collar of your jacket up real tight. What the locals call a steamy summer morning. The doors of this old place had a lot of feet pass through them. Today they'd be mine. My phone had rang on a September day. I was asked for by name. I was a little put out, had some foot dangling to catch up on, but after I gave myself a minute to cool down, I decided to give him a chance.
Sorry, who were you meeting?
Yeah, I'm coming to that. Just bear with me.
Right.
I took my hat off and tucked a cigarette behind my ear as I walked into the reception area. The girl at the desk wore shell glasses, a cigarette and a glass of port. I slid one of my cards over the desk, the one that said Prime Minister and had a little black machine gun in the corner. She flicked it under her shell frames and lowered her lashes until they almost cuddled her cheeks. took it in, and slowly raised them again like a theater curtain. I knew that trick. It's supposed to make me roll over with all four paws in the air. After a moment, I decided I was flattered.
Tall, ain't ya?
She said. Didn't mean to be, I said. I took a seat, swung one leg over the other, and leaned back in what was a pretty comfortable chair for a waiting room.
If I can just bring you back to the question, before the 2013 election,
Look,
you
you've
said
asked
that-
me a question, give me a chance to answer it.
Right.
A buzzer sounded on the old mahogany desk, and the number attending it gestured to me to head into the office behind her. The office smelled rich, like secret meetings and cigars. The wallpaper was faded, but not shabby, and so was the bird standing ready to greet me. He was bold as a brick and dressed classy, but only enough to notice. He stepped forward and put a hand in the air for me to shake. A gold ring cut into his thick finger like a first-term treasurer into a healthcare budget. I looked at it and then up at him. I got a call, I said.
Yes, Mr. Abbott.
He said, please, call me Captain. Everybody does.
Well, Captain, I have some important... Well, I have some unpleasantries to convey to you.
This guy thought he was big time. Important don't impress me, chum. What is it and why should it matter to little old me? He didn't like that one. Curled his lip at me. Maybe I was playing it a little too cute.
Tony, Captain, the polls are disastrous. They have been for a solid 18 months now.
He said. He had a bad nose and ears like a club steak. You talk too damn much and too damn much of it's about you, I told him. He gave me a look that ought to have stuck 4 inches out my back, but went on.
I know that you're the kind of man that's not afraid of a little hard work or of wearing the shine off of his shoes, but many in your cabinet no longer have confidence in you to take this government to the next election. The party room, they're not sure if you're up to the job any longer, if you catch my drift.
I didn't, but I decided to let that one ride. Here's the deal, I told him. $250 up front, $100 a day plus expenses, I said. I don't do divorce work. Give it to me straight. I let him chew on that for a second.
Mr. Abbott, I don't think you're grasping the gravity of this situation.
I cut him off. And I want a yearly pension of $307,542 after I retire, I added. He looked at me like an out-of-work scarecrow. I don't mind if you don't like my manners, I said. They're pretty bad. I grieve over them during the long winter nights. He spoke very slowly, using his words as carefully as a penniless showgirl uses her last good pair of stockings.
That's really besides the point, Mr. Abbott. The problem is that the Australian people are no longer responding to your simplistic economic arguments, the tired national security wolf crying, the endless slogans.
He trailed off like he just remembered a bit of last night's dream and it was better than right now. I stared down at him, rumpled my hair, which was already rumpled. I put the old tired grin on my face.
Do you know what I'm referring to? The slogans, stop the boats, axe the tax, debt and deficit.
Now we were talking, but he wasn't finished.
Will you be able to do what needs to be done?
I've been known to be, in a pinch. He liked that. A smile crept onto his face and gave me a look at some expensive dentistry.
Thank you for your service to this country, Tony.
He finished. I grinned and lit the cigarette I'd left behind my ear. Flattery will get you everywhere, Chief. You found your man. As I was leaving, I noticed that the girl on the desk still had my card. Call that number anytime, darling, I said, like a true minister for women. She batted her eyelashes and blushed. I love it when they do that. I stamped out the spent cigarette on the concrete, opened the door of my sled, and slid behind the steering wheel. I had a gear stick in my hand, a quarter brown in the glove compartment, and nothing on my mind except for the task at hand. Stop the boats, end the waste, fight the baddies. What else was new? I caught myself sighing. Out of character for you, Abbott. You must be getting tired. 20 years in Parliament will do that to a man. But it wasn't time to rest yet. I had a job to do, and I was going to do it right. Someone had to get this country heading in the right direction, and it had to be me.
Okay, thank you for joining us this evening, Mr. Abbott.
Now it's time for our America Checkup, where we look at the state of healthcare in the United States.
America. According to our collective Hollywood brainwashing, it's the land of opportunity. The United States of America can be found in this general area. Their national bird is the bald eagle, and their national drink is the bald eagle. Now, everyone knows that America's healthcare system is all shitty, even after the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare! Communism! But what about the state of abortion rights, which are protected by the law and which the Supreme Court has ruled to be constitutional? Let's take a closer look.
In much the same way as Republicans in 2013 tried to block the passing of the Affordable Care Act by refusing to pass the funding for it, despite it being the law, they are now attempting to block funding for Planned Parenthood, due to their objections to their provision of abortion services, despite that being protected by the law.
The wacky kerfuffle began after ironically named Centre for Medical Progress released a series of accidentally, intentionally misleading videos purporting to show Planned Parenthood doctors talking about the sale of quote-unquote baby body parts for profit, and showing distressing images of late-term aborted fetuses being harvested for organs. House Republicans held a congressional hearing into the funding of Planned Parenthood in which they asked the CEO stupid questions and then refused to let her answer them.
Do you defend the sale of baby body parts?
No. And I think that is really a total mischaracterization. Fewer than 1% of our health centers do any facilitate fetal tissue donation for the patient, but fetal tissue research has...
My time has run out. I just want to say this. It seems to me that the apology you offered was like what some criminals do. They're not really sorry for what they've done. They're sorry they got caught.
There have been 9 congressional votes on whether to pull Planned Parenthood's funding since 2007, despite the fact that 1 in 3 American women has had an abortion, 1 in 5 has visited a Planned Parenthood clinic, and that polls consistently put Planned Parenthood on the top-ranking non-profit organizations in the country.
Yes, even the defunding rhetoric is misguided, as the government actually just gives reimbursement for services delivered that are covered by programs such as Medicaid, America's shit version of Medicare. Planned Parenthood are not simply handed a check by the government. None of that funding can be allocated to abortion services, so any defunding effort would actually just affect other women's health services, such as STI prevention and treatment, contraception, and cancer screenings.
Also produced during the hearing was this.
Let me go to the last
highly
one.
accountable.
My time, I've gone over time. I need to show this last slide. This one I don't understand. Is that you don't do mammograms. So if you... Go ahead.
I'm sorry,
You don't do mammograms, correct? There's like 1 or 2 places that doesn't, but you don't do mammograms.
If you would give me one moment to explain. Planned Parenthood is a women's health center. We provide breast exams to, I can get you the numbers of how many hundreds of thousands of women received breast exams at Planned Parenthood last year. Has nothing to do with, I don't, again,
here's
you
the
created this slide, I have no idea what it is.
Well, it's the reduction over the course of years in pink. That's the reduction in the breast exams, and the red is the increase in the abortions. That's what's going on in your organization. I pulled those numbers directly out of your corporate reports.
Oh, excuse me, my loggers are informing me that the source of this is actually Americans United for Life, which is an anti-abortion group, so I would check your source.
Then we will get to the bottom of the truth of that.
Yes, now, as you can see, this chart shows that the number of abortions in 2013 is higher than in 2006. And the number of cancer screenings in 2013 is lower than in 2006.
Hang on, what about the numbers for the intervening years?
Yes, shocking, I know, yeah.
Wait, hang on. This chart has no y-axis. Why is the abortion number higher than the cancer number on this chart?
Oh, okay, yes, sir. It may appear to some people that the number 327,000 is actually lower than the number 935,573. But that's only if you use mathematics. The key to this chart is this chart. See, as women gain more control over their bodies, the amount of confected outrage about abortion increases, as do the related phenomena of old men crying and masturbating alone, and nonsensical graphs.
This is all so fascinating. What do you think, audience? Should the Republicans pull out of this attack on Planned Parenthood?
Should they perhaps abstain from this strategy?
Maybe they should just abort the whole thing.
Oh, Jesus, Luke.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You decide.
Well, that was heavy. But let it never be said that we don't understand our target audience. You, university students.
Yes, suck it, George W. Bush.
That's right. In a clear display of pandering and also targeted marketing, here's Lindsay with some sweet slam poetry.
University, university. People meet, people think, people talk, people drink. Talking, drinking, meeting, thinking. You've all got ideas, most of them stinking. Big opinions, without any facts. Too caught up in trying to bring down the perceived fat cats. Yeah, you finish school, try to work out what you want to be, decided you'd go out and get an arts degree, caught up thinking about me, the selfish minds of people at university. University. Yeah, you see countouts from the government, but this kind of thing is to the nation's detriment. Historicizing, philosophizing, politicizing, psychologizing, but fuck it. You don't need these kinds of things when you put your faith in the free market. Come with me. Listen closer. I'll tell you something that'll make you less morosa. Unions turn us into communists, but there's time for us to change yet. We can build a nation that would make Ayn Rand wet.
Australia's asylum seeker policies. Some people, such as everyone in the world except Australians, say they're terrible. But are they terrible? Yet another report has come out this week about Nauru, the adorable little island that many have called a failed state, where apparently asylum seekers are now allowed to wander around outside the razor wire fences.
Oh, free range asylum seekers. That sounds nice, actually.
And the Australian government are concerned about a potential backlash for bringing an asylum seeker who fell pregnant after a sexual assault to Australia for medical treatment.
To discuss the state of Australia's offshore detention policies, for our third interview for the night,
please welcome star of stage and screen, Hinda Labateau.
Actually, I'm the spokesperson for the Department of Immigration and Border Protection.
Indeed. Now, Hinda Labateau, it's been such a long time since we spoke. What's happened in the months since you've been on the podcast? And did you change your name?
It's great to be here, Lindsay. It's been a time of real change and growth in the Department of Immigration, and yes, I thought this name was funnier.
Excellent. You must have a lot to share with us today, then.
No, not at all. You see, we have a policy of not making comments regarding on-water matters.
Right. Let's move on to the government-run offshore detention centres, then.
We've actually rebranded the detention facilities on Nauru, Christmas Island and Manus Island as concentration camps.
Well, that's refreshingly honest of you.
I don't quite know what you mean by that, Lindsay, but anyway, we thought that detention sounded a bit vindictive, and these facilities are really more about reflection and rehabilitation. The idea is that our prisoners should feel encouraged to concentrate on their naughty behaviour. For instance, instead of bothering Australia with their legal right to seek asylum and fleeing war and persecution, they might in the future consider instead just staying where they are and dying where we don't have to look at them. As for centre, it was just a little boring and bureaucratic sounding, so we went with the much more fun camp. We also toyed with the idea of calling them forced labour camps because we wanted to force Labour to adopt our harsh punitive refugee policies.
Well, at least that seems to have worked out for you. Let's move on. A report by Amnesty International has labelled Australia's offshore detention policies as particularly egregious and finds that, quote, the deliberately harsh, humiliating conditions were designed to pressure asylum seekers to return to their country of origin regardless of whether or not they were genuine refugees. Would you agree with that finding?
Lindsay, this is about saving lives. The Australian people don't want to see people dying at sea. We're absolutely committed to stopping people dying in our waters. We would very much prefer it if they would do the polite, respectful thing and die somewhere else.
Okay, so what are their other options?
Well, there are plenty of places in this world to die, Lindsay. They could die in the countries they're fleeing from.
By not fleeing at all, you mean?
Correct. They could try fleeing to another country to die in their waters. You know, a lot of other countries are signatories to the United Nations Refugee Convention, Article 31 of which says that it is not illegal to arrive in the country by boat or without documentation. There are even some countries that uphold their obligations to that convention. It's incredible. I mean, what are the UN going to do? Give us an after-school detention? Just try United Nations? We don't even care. School sucks anyway. Sorry, I think I lost my train of thought there. What were we...
So you were saying that you don't want to see people drowning at sea?
Oh, yes. No, we don't want that. We are very concerned about people drowning.
But when the Australian Navy is pushing boats back out to sea, surely that increases the risk of drowning twofold.
Oh, at least.
So how can you say you're concerned about them drowning at sea?
Well, Lindsay, we only turn back the boats when it's safe to do so.
And when is that?
Always.
How do you know?
We don't know, Lindsay, and that's the point. This government has stopped the boats. Stop the boats. Stop the boats. The important thing is that we get them out of Australian waters so that we can safely ignore whether or not they're drowning. Because we care.
Okay. To another matter, as part of the resettlement agreement with the impoverished nation of Cambodia, over $50 million of taxpayer funds were given to the corruption-addled Cambodian government, but only 4 refugees were ever resettled there. Will your government now admit that this was both reckless and extravagantly wasteful?
Money well spent. These 4 will love Cambodia. I went there for a holiday last year, actually. You can drink beer on the beaches, never work, and spend all your white people money. It's a great time.
Okay. Transfield Services, the company the Australian government is paying $60 million a month to run our detention camps. According to their own documents, there is an average of 1 reported assault every 5 days. There have been many concerns about poorly trained staff and inadequate resources.
Well, I am confident that these centres are being run to the highest possible standards and that everything is absolutely fine.
Well, can we have a look then?
No, stop the boats. What's important here is that we stop the boats. What we do is stop the boats, and that's what the Australian people voted us in to do.
I think it's clear that the Australian people...
Stop the boats.
I think it's clear that the Australian people are not satisfied with that answer.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, I have to go. I have to get back to the Liberal Party room. Those virgins won't slaughter themselves.
Indeed, they won't. Thanks for joining me, Indolbato. We couldn't have done this interview without you or, like, anyone else from your department.
Stop the boats.
Let's go.
As a busy chair, I know all about itchy skin conditions caused by orthostatic beetroot root. That's why I choose a fabric softener with increased temper and a manual grip for women. It's the plastic towel that stays up to 35%, even when you're on the go. The red glide ball technology works by communicating chocolate flavouring through any steel surface, even your old shag carpets. Amazing! The unique ball glide technology rips existential pain right out of the source instead of just placating it like other razors do. Well, that should keep this bunch happy.
Queer youth homelessness. What is it? Where did it come from? And what does it want? To answer these questions, we go now to our roving reporter, Jamara Porkwell, who filed this report.
That's right, Lance. While the public purview is predominantly placed on marriage equality, few folks frequently focus on this forgotten facet of flouting the queer community. The queer community is overrepresented among homeless people, and homeless queer people are actually more likely than...
G'day, mates. Is this Crown? Is this Crown? I've heard that Crown's a place to go to have a good time in the city.
Wow, it's Bill from Which Acolyte, ladies and gentlemen.
great to see you, but I'm afraid this isn't Crown. This is the Weekly Hour's live show, the Weekly Hour, the Nightly Live.
Oh, the Weekly Hour. Live, you can do it live these days. Struth, what do they think of next? Oh, that's our favourite show out in Wajak. Yeah, you know, we just love it every day. The postie brings it every fourth Wednesday, actually it is. The postie brings it out in the mail, and my youngest son, Billy, walks down after he's gotten off the bus, right? He picks it up, he walks it back to the house. Some people say it's a bit rough to make your kids walk home from school, but it's only 32 k's for Pete's sake. Anyway, we get all the episodes, right? We bring them out and we all take turns reading the sort of all the different parts, you know? So there's me, my missus, Bill, my son Bill, Uncle Bill, cousin Bill, and Daisy Smith, of course, the cow, right? Daisy's a big fan of it, although she does get a bit upset when she doesn't get to read your parts, mate. She's a big fan.
Oh, right. Well, while we have you, Bill, can you think of any dire news that's affecting Australia's farmers? A lot has changed over the course of Australian history, and fewer people than ever are riding around on the backs of sheep. It's an exciting time.
Yes, well, there is one thing, a big change that we're all excited about out in the land. That's the promotion of old mate Barnaby Joyce to the water portfolio. It's just great news to irrigators here, there and everywhere. Although there are people out there, lefties, you know, who are going to say that this is a very bad move for Australia's water supply and the economy and the ecosystem and all that sort of thing, but they just got no fucking idea what they're talking about, right? If you think about it, where does the water come from? Do these people know?
I don't believe they do.
It comes from the sky, right, when it rains. So regardless of where you are, there's always to be more water coming, okay? Unless you're further downriver, in which case all the water's been used by those further upriver. But now that the National's in charge, I'm sure everything will just work out fine.
So, given as I won't get to do my report, you think that the shifting of water from the environment portfolio to the agriculture one is a good move then?
Yes, well, I think it's an excellent move, although I don't think they've gone far enough. When you think about it, the environment as a concept is really just stuff that's outside and all around, right? And when you think about it a bit more, what else is outside and all around? Well, farms, obviously. So what they should do is just take the entire environment portfolio and just stick it in there with agriculture. It just makes sense.
You know what, never mind.
Well, I'm sorry I haven't called in a while. You know, I've been pretty busy. I've had a fair bit on. I was up at Henty the other week, actually. I was after a new chicken harvest. You know, out with the chook harvest. The one they sold me wasn't actually calibrated for chickens. So when I pulled into the lot, they got all jammed up in the engine, and it was all filled up with guts and entrails, and the whole thing caught fire. Fucking last time over by a John Deere. Have you ever heard of chicken fire? It kills the soul. Horrible stuff. But anyway, I better take off. I left Daisy Smith in the back of the Hilux. I was pulling into town, and this copper pulled me over and said, "Mate, you can't have a cow in the front seat." So I put her in the back. She gets a bit skittish though, so I better take off. I guess I'll see you at Crown later, yeah? Yeah, no, I'll keep the tennis school for you,
It was nice to catch up with Bill, but now let's go to the weather.
We cross now to Thomas with the weather. Thomas?
Yes, good morning. First to Hobart, where the weather has been unruly. Unknown liquids have been falling seemingly from nowhere, dampening the ground, the tops of houses, and even some of the hard-working average Aussie battlers who were caught in the open when it began. The source of this wetness remains mysterious, but in this meteorologist's humble speculation, it appears that the water consists of the sorrowful tears of some unseen, all-knowing, and omnipotent deity. Of course, these events beg the question, what has so displeased this all-powerful titan? Have we angered it, or does it simply grieve for the terrible suffering which we inflict upon one another? Either way, remember to take an umbrella if you're out and about this weekend. Up to Melbourne now, where citizens have expressed a deep concern regarding a notable shortage of sunlight between the hours of 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. The sun's disappearance has been recurrent, according to the locals, who have taken to calling this phenomenon the night time. The terrifying occurrence seems to show no signs of stopping. Many citizens, broken by the hopelessness of it all, have taken to simply lying down in the dark and hallucinating wildly until the sun returns. Moving on to the rest of the nation now, where here, and here, it is pretty hot. It's always been pretty hot, and it will continue to be pretty hot. Back to you, Lance.
Back to me. So this is too much responsibility. Let's go to the headlines.
Weekly Hour. The Trans-Pacific Partnership. People on Facebook hate it because apparently it might have some bad stuff in, but nobody really knows because the documents haven't been released yet. On the other hand, some say that it might have a net positive effect on our ability to be competitive in a global marketplace. But nobody really knows because the documents haven't been released yet.
Yes, anti-Trans-Pacific Partnership activists say that the deal could negatively affect food safety standards, environmental protections, labour laws, and impose anti-consumer copyright protections. But nobody actually knows because the documents haven't been released yet.
Meanwhile, business lobbyists and many governments, including our own and the American government, say that the elimination of tariffs and other regulations will increase comparative advantage and allow for free trade between nations as well as other economic-y type words. Furthermore, the deal will establish minimum standards for labour and environmental regulations, meaning that countries such as ours won't face unfair competition from countries that are allowed to trash their environment and their workers' rights. But nobody knows because the documents haven't been released yet.
Well, this is an outrage. Well, you know, it's like fine. I'm not sure because the documents haven't been released yet.
Of course, the treaty will need to be ratified before it has any legal effect, and the text will be made public at the time so we can all be appropriately outraged or fine with it then.
And former Prime Minister Captain Tony Abbott of the HMS Team Australia has pleaded the Fifth Amendment when asked if he's forgiven current Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, or Malcontent Turncoat, as he is known amongst the people who comment on Andrew Bolt's blog.
Abbott refused to answer the question, likely based on his post-ousting promise of no sniping, but was later spotted at his local Coles with a basket full of Ben & Jerry's and a DVD copy of 500 Days of Summer.
And now to a special report. With the country still reeling in the aftershock of the recent prime ministerial changeover, this week marks an important time in the Australian electoral calendar. With just over 15 months until the absolute latest date which we can have the next federal election, voter anticipation is reaching fever pitch.
For more on the frenzied race to the vote, we throw now to our roving reporter, Jamara Porkwell.
Okay, Jamara, what's it like out there?
That's right, Lance. I'm here at the West Footscray Community Kindergarten, where it seems the early turnout to vote consists entirely of very short, very enthusiastic young men and women. In fact, some of these vertically challenged voters appear to be camping out in the rooms here in anticipation of the vote, something they've called nap time. Yes, the conviviality here is categorically contagious, with many of the voters actually lining up in pairs and holding hands on the way into the polls.
Well, that's fascinating, Jamara. I assume emotions are running high?
Well, yes, although one voter did seem upset, tearily telling nearby reporters that he'd gone in his pants. The majority of voters here appear to be singing with zesty zeal, with yet another voter telling us he expected a large swing in the polls, possibly a sandpit and a slippery slide too.
Incredible. So, you're saying that people are already casting votes, with the election not even announced yet?
That's right, Lance, and it would seem that the Electoral Commission has taken a bold and bright new direction with the polling process itself this time around, leaving behind the traditional pencil and paper method for a new, what appears to be, large sheets of butcher's paper and water-based paints, which voters apply directly to the ballot papers using their feasibly feces-contaminated fingers. It remains to be seen whether these playful polling presses will lead to an indiscreet increase in the informal vote. I have to go now, as I'm being told that all registered voters need to sit on the mat now and eat some fruit. I'm Jamara Porkwell for the Weekly Hour, the broadcaster that never takes a nap.
And now, to our special report on queer youth homelessness.
Ah, shit, guys. We are like so out of time.
Oh, well, that's disappointing. Just won't do it.
You know, Lindsay, it is disappointing when things end. But don't worry too much. If you have now become chemically dependent on the Weekly Hour, you can always listen to the podcast version of it, which you can find at www.theweeklyhour.org.
Oh, happy day.
Yep. And if you wanted to do some other stuff with us, with some other stuff too, you could, like, us on Facebook, like typing The Weekly Hour into the search box there and clicking the one with the logo and with the little words that what says The Weekly Hour on it.
Or you could do a following of us on Twitter for all our funny little insights about things that are happening on the telly.
And again, remember to listen to our podcast, The Weekly Hour, available at all of your favourite internets, such as iTunes and theweeklyhour.org. It's really, really good.
And thank you to Leo, Greg, Aaron, and anyone else who contributed stuff.
So to take us out this evening, we have a very special musical performance by our musical guest, singer and songwriter, Ophelia Sidebottom. You know, I've heard that this song could be a metaphor for the federal opposition leaders' attempts to appeal to the public.
Oh, interesting. Deep.
You showed up in a blue-green checkered shirt. I wore high heels and a mini skirt. We went out to a bar. I never thought the night would go this far. You led me to the table, and then you ordered a beer. Red wine and cigarette lips, just a little bit closer. I was feeling fine just an hour ago, but then a rumble takes hold, and I say, oh no, you're not gonna believe this. It's all over the chair. I think it was the chicken wrap I got from the cellar. I shot myself on a date. Shot myself on a date. I shot myself on a date. I shot myself. Now when I told my main point is dead because I shot myself, it's so unfair. It could have been you, it could have been anyone, anywhere. I shot myself on a date. I shake myself into you. I shot myself on a date. I shot myself because a single coup can flush your life down the loo. It could make you go insane, but now I know the truth. I am not ashamed.
Almost everyone shits their pants at some stage during their adult life. It is completely normal.
I shot myself on a date. I shot myself on a date. I shot